If you happen to discover that you simply can't get a perfectly clean and precise triangle with just 3 cuts, then you really need to focus your efforts on mastering the specific nuances of the undercutting technique. That means you're not reaching far enough with the knife. You can clearly see that the heel of the blade just isn't reaching far enough. For this reason, you should pay attention and go back to training, because these kinds of touch-ups, ideally, are not acceptable. The triangle should be formed with just 3 cuts. Practice session. Lesson. Interesting. We're not working from the top, but stepping in a little over here. The brush is as relaxed as possible. The trimmed fuzz is angled. With this kind of marking, it's very important to remember. We work from the center. Don't tilt the knife. Hold it straight. First, firmly sink the heel, tilt it slightly, flip it completely over, and hold it straight. Then, carefully sink the heel again, tilt it, and flip it over one more time. So, on the sides, carefully sink it down, then slightly tilt it. Next. Undercut. Undercut. And as you can see, this is how it turns out. The most important thing is that you really need to hold the knife perfectly straight. While this particular sketch is definitely more suited for a traditional straight knife, you will find that it is actually just as easy and straightforward to accomplish the same results using a curved spoon knife instead. And undercut. Сильно мелкий орнамент. Не вижу его. Actually, even here it's better if it's uneven, at an angle. Here. You can cut it short, or you can cut it to full length. You can just make an incision to preserve the integrity of the little star in the center. So instead of removing it completely, you do it like this. This marking is intended exclusively for a skew chisel. There are a lot of unnecessary steps that simply aren't needed. Speaking technically about this, there's a lot of excess, a lot of unnecessary cuts and repeated actions that are simply unjustified. The angle of the inclination is shifted entirely and exclusively inward. Because of the crucial initial scoring process, which the sharp working blade of the skew chisel carefully places in a perfectly straight line, positioning it not at an awkward angle, but in a direct and straight path, the entire wood turning process is significantly simplified and made much more efficient for the craftsman. This same decorative ornament can be made in a much more simple way, without all of this unnecessary and extra stuff. There's just a lot of unnecessary stuff. Extra steps. I'll tell you straight up, these particular layout design principles that use lines exactly like the ones right here, yeah, you make one very clean cut, then 2 cuts, 3 cuts, and finally, you just need to do a nice and quick little trim. All of that, just making straight cuts with a knife, is over. Now, let me take a moment to explain the practical side of this principle. All the markings you see here are similar, basically, to the principle. If we pay attention, for example, right here, it's built on the principle in no tilting at all. The knife, let's say, is set perfectly straight. Make one perfectly straight cut, without any tilting whatsoever. Then perform the second cut. So we are going to make a clean straight cut, and that will be the third one for this piece. I went ahead and trimmed it once, then I trimmed it a second time, and I even trimmed it a third time to be sure. But unfortunately, the blade just didn't manage to cut all the way through the material. It seems like no matter how many times I run the tool over this spot, there is still a piece holding on, preventing a clean break from happening despite my repeated attempts to slice through it. This is the practical side of things. I'll show you the difference right away. Let's say 1, 2. So that's 3. Right now, it's not about cleanliness, it's about other nuances. Take a look. And for this one, here we have, that is, sharpness, meaning there is no, first of all, angle of inclination, just like here, basically. What exactly does the complete lack of an angle of inclination lead to? It leads to the fact that if we later want to, say, incorporate additional fine details, for example, then basically the material simply won't actually remain on the element we want to work with afterwards. And if we don't have any strength left in reserve, what does that lead to? To a possible future chip or fracture. Here, my hand is just placed here for demonstration. I can perform this action. But if you keep doing these specific actions right here, on the inside, it's going to crumble quite a lot. That's exactly why the method and the fundamental principle of working, specifically making a standard basic notch at a precise angle once, then let's say a second time, and a simple undercut as the third step, allow us to keep the angle here for further intricate detailing. Now, among experienced craftsmen, this particular technique is simply called leaving the body of the material. But here, if we just simply do it in this specific way, with these straight actions right here, we basically completely rob ourselves of the opportunity. Let's pay attention to the sequence. The marking clearly shows a straight cut, a straight notch, another notch, and 3 completely unnecessary undercuts. Alright, how can this be done? Thanks to 3 steps, 1, 2, 3. So that's 3 fewer without any cleaning up. But what should we pay attention to? It's not recommended to actually start working from the edges in this part. Why? Because according to the marking, in the end, we'll have what here that's very weak. That's right, the ribs. For this reason, you need to start exactly from the center here. And how exactly? So you carefully set it in place and cut straight through. Or rather, you set the heel and made the tilt. Step on your heel, then tilt. Slowly step on your heel, then tilt. It is generally not recommended to start any of these specific actions from this particular side where the delicate tip is located, primarily because the tip is quite weak and prone to breaking. Therefore, to ensure safety and precision, all of your actions should always begin from the sturdy center and move outward toward the tip. Press it in, gently tilt it. We repeat the same actions on the other side. Watch closely. After carefully making angled cuts from the center out toward the very tip, it is important that you do not make a full cut right away. First, you need to check by carefully trimming along the direction of the grain. Basically, the direction is correct. So next, we can proceed with a full cut. Slice it about halfway through, then create the desired angle. Simply relying and depending exclusively on the direction of the grain is highly impractical and often misleading in practice because the grain might seem to be flowing in one specific direction on the surface, but deep inside you can have a complex and entirely different internal weave structure. Therefore, if we have already performed these specific cuts in this direction, it is generally not recommended or advisable to cut back the other way. Instead, you should continue the entire cycle in that same direction if it has already been cut. The next steps, since the spouts are a bit loose, it's better not to make the cut from here. It's best to make the initial cut first. The principle changes here. Here's where you make the cut. The cut. We heard a distinct click as we finally made the cut. And then, we very carefully and precisely proceed to make a final trim. That way your notch comes out nice and clean. So if you haven't cut all the way through, it's better not to tear it out, but to go over it again. Why do we have a missing cut here? It's better not to do it like this. I'm showing you the practical side because it can automatically pull things along with it. That is why it is recommended not to disrupt the order, because structural defects might develop. See, it's pulling. It's messy. Why is this unacceptable? So we have a comparison example. When we do the first two steps, namely the cut, and the undercut, then our groove turns out clean. If we make a cut from here and a kind of undercut, what does that lead to? Exactly. One way or another, it leads to certain defects. The sequence of actions has successfully resumed once again, so the cutouts are now being formed with a very clean and professional finish. You definitely need to be extremely mindful and observant of the specific order of cuts and undercuts, because any violation of this established order will inevitably result in a very sloppy execution. Following the correct order results in clean execution. It's very important to know this. After making the geometric notches, we've basically already established the construction principle. It might seem like the concept of geometric carving ends here, but we take a short half-round chisel and make a punch. We use a smaller size, and as a practical example, we use a larger size. For this reason, a geometric ornament can't be formed solely by making notches. The main tools are short, half-round chisels and, accordingly, angled chisels. They assist you in the process to significantly diversify and expand your intricate geometric ornaments. That is, if you examine the design from one particular side. If we don't just work right at the very edge, but move a bit further in, closer to the center, and cover a slightly larger area. When you get some mess on the opposite wall, don't worry too much about it, because later it all gets cut off in a single pass. What's important here in the first steps is to focus on keeping the newly formed grooves clean. We're working specifically along the edges that we've created. Let's clean this up a little right here. So what do we see here? Next, for our ornament, we use short, semicircular chisels with a beveled edge. And right over here, we carefully work with a steady upward sweeping motion. Shift it just a little bit, then carefully lift it upward. Shift the position once more and lift it up again. Lift the carved section out of Manny. Clean it up. clean it up ourselves with a trimming machine. And you can clearly see that thanks to the secondary action